Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the Gary Neville Podcast. We're live at Stamford Bridge, where we've just seen Chelsea thump Middlesbrough in this Carabao Cup semi-final, second leg by 6-1. Gary, first of all, how good were Chelsea? How much were Middlesbrough architects of their own downfall?
Yeah, quite a lot, really. Chelsea were clinical. There was a statistic or a graphic that came up at the end that they had 6 shots on target and all 6 of them went in the back of the net. Let me just turn that down a little bit. And that was mainly because Middlesbrough were giving it away, obviously, in sort of their own defensive third, and high-quality players or, players that have got greater quality just latching onto it. Cole Palmer was sort of benefited from it. It's something, like I said, I mentioned during commentary. I've given up almost commentating or saying it anymore, that just purely because every manager, and I include Michael Carrick in this, they've got to get their players better at playing out from the back. They're not going to resort to what we would have done 15 years ago, which was if you were getting pressed and you were getting caught, you miss the midfield out and you go to your front players. It just doesn't happen. And it's never going to happen. We're never going to see it return, I wouldn't have thought, en masse, because it's just not the reality of what happens. We see these teams playing out from the back. They have the shape that they play from. The centre-back split really wide, and then they get into midfield and they take big risks. What I would have regarded as a football player as massive risks, and sometimes we're now seeing full-backs going into midfield and play with the backs to goal. So, look, it's mesmerising what's happening, what's being expected of goalkeepers and defenders or football players in those deeper positions. But what we've seen tonight is that obviously when you don't do it as well, and you've got players maybe of a lower standard against a team of a high standard who are cute and clever and can sort of nip in and press you, then you're going to get really punished. And I just wonder whether that was the right tactic. And the other one was obviously seeing Howson just drop back into that back position very deep. I thought just when you're playing 4-4-2 as a sort of defensive unit, which is what Middlesbrough were doing at times, but then Howson goes back in, he was jumping out, jumping back in. I thought that made it just quite difficult for the right centre-back and right-back. I would have found it difficult, I think, to know when Howson's going to be there and when he's not going to be there, because he wasn't playing zonal to the point whereby if Vandenberg had a runner inside him, he could hand him over to Howson. He had to sort of go with him, and that's where one of the chances came from. So I think it was a quality difference that we knew about. We feared that could happen tonight, that Chelsea would go ahead and get 2, 3, 4, 5 goals. But I do feel Middlesbrough, in their intention to continue to play and not change, meant that it was a lot easier for Chelsea, because it wasn't really from great play that Chelsea scored the goals. It was from Middlesbrough's being caught in possession.
A lot of talk before this second leg, given what happened in the first one when some of the Chelsea fans booed the team. Thiago Silva had to go across and calm them down. How important is what happened here tonight for the progression of this group, for the progression of what Mauricio Pochettino is trying to do here?
It was necessity. I mean, it was unthinkable if they were to sort of go out of this competition tonight and Middlesbrough to go to the final. And from Mauricio Pochettino, Sir Alex Ferguson used this as a springboard at times in his Manchester United career, sort of middle of his Manchester United career in 2006 when I just took over as captain. It was the first trophy that I lifted. And we'd been barren for 3 years. It was in the Mourinho sort of Wenger period, Rafa Benitez, where it was a really strong Premier League and we just couldn't get, close to them for a few years. And then we basically, on our way back to winning the Premier League title, I think in 2006-07, we won the League Cup in 2006 in March against Wigan at Cardiff, and it was a big moment. And the League Cup, when you've won the Champions League maybe, and you won the Premier League and you've won the FA Cup, is the inferior tournament, but as a stepping stone for building something, and getting that medal round your neck and being on that podium, it was really important to us. And we shouldn't underestimate how important it will be for Chelsea if they can go and beat Fulham or Liverpool in that final in 4 weeks' time, because for Todd Bowley, for the confidence of everything that's happening at the club, it's been a real difficult period, this transition from Abramovich into this new sort of ownership. And I feel that, obviously it's going to be difficult, particularly if they play Liverpool. But if they can win a trophy, honestly, these young players in particular will gain so much from it.
Give us an idea. If you are one of these Chelsea players, age 21, who's come into a lot of them to this league for the first time. A lot of them haven't really played that much first-team football, even coming in to the Premier League for the first time. What will it do for them to get a medal around their neck, even to get the feeling of the final, even if they do fall short?
Look, I can only speak from my own personal experiences, but it made you feel like you belonged. I mean, my first season in the first team, we lost the Premier League and FA Cup final in a week. We had the game at West Ham where Blackburn were playing Liverpool, and we couldn't get the second goal to win the league. And obviously, in the end, Blackburn won the league. And then the week later, we lost the FA Cup final against Everton. And I felt like, oh my God, I missed my chance. You just don't think it's ever going to come along again. So when you get to a final, you really have to try to make sure it happens. And the year after, we won the league, and you all of a sudden, you feel that you're a winner. And, that's what those Chelsea young players will feel when they're on that podium. Everybody's looking at them. There's millions watching around the world and in this country. And they're out there and they've gone and done it in a final and they've delivered and they've got rid of that tag of being nearly men or not able to get over the line. All those things that get levelled at you when you don't win a trophy, which sometimes can be a little bit unfair because there's only 4 trophies to go around every season. But it's been levelled at their manager, Maurizio Pochettino, in this country. So it's a big, big game for the manager, for the ownership, but for the players and for the young players. Honestly, there is nothing that will give you more confidence than winning a medal and winning a trophy, because they'll then see that if they can do that, I mean, let's say it's Liverpool at Wembley, and that'll be a huge game for these Chelsea players, and Liverpool are a better side at the moment. But if you can go and beat a big team like Liverpool at Wembley in front of 90,000 people, honestly, that has a big impact on your life, let alone in terms of your career, because it's something you never forget. Your family are all there. It's a big moment, and it's something that, like you say, confidence is everything in football, in life. You believe. If you believe, and it's not just about your own belief, it's about the belief that the fans have in you, that we have in them, that the manager has in them. And if they can go and win in a big moment, that's what Chelsea have done for many, many years. There are times where I remember Di Matteo taking over at Christmas, or near Christmas time was it, and ended up winning the Champions League. Yeah, because you think about Chelsea, they've been a winning club, and that's not always been with beautiful football. They've had to really dig in at times, and they've just somehow under Abramovich become got a winning mentality, even if they change managers. So if they can develop a winning mentality, even in transition, that will give them confidence that this project of Chelsea of this sort of last 20 years can continue under Bowley and co.
Because one of the criticisms about this Chelsea side has been that they, in times of difficulty, they don't have enough leaders. Will that help create some? And I'll ask you in a minute about Ben Chilwell's return. But a group where is still bonding, can that help forge some leadership?
It can. I mean, look. There's still. I mean, Maurizio Pochettino will be the most honest coach that I would know, and honestly, he'll know that when he watches them, that this is miles away from what he would want in terms of combinations and patterns of play. They still look very clunky when you watch them and a little bit ugly to watch and not quite there, and you're not quite sure the style of play. It's still very much a collection of individuals and players rather than a team unit. And we've seen Maurizio Pochettino at Southampton and Spurs create really good teams where you look at them and think, wow, they all know what each other do. He's just not been able to do that here yet in that first period. So, yeah, it will create leaders, but I think he's also trying to build a team and a team unit. And this will help. And like I said, they've been poor at times in the league, and they've had some difficult moments. And they do lack, I mean, they have got some leaders on the pitch. They have. I mean, Thiago Silva is. I think the way Enzo Fernandez plays, he takes responsibility. I'm not saying he's impacting the rest of his teammates all the time in what I'm seeing, but he's a very good player and he takes responsibility. He's a little bit like Bruno Fernandes, actually, in some senses on the pitch. You see him in positions where sometimes he's centre forward for 15, 20 minutes, then he's getting the ball off his centre-backs when he wants to, so you can't quite pin him down what he's doing. But what you do know is he's got loads of confidence in himself and he's got really good sort of belief in what he's doing. He just has to make sure that then gets to the rest of the players around him. So there are some players that you see have got a bit of spirit. Raheem Sterling's got quite a bit of spirit. And obviously you mentioned Chilwell coming back. It was a big return for him.
Ben Chilwell, we touched on in the commentary, and I know you were talking before about it, but how important is this, not just for this season, but for his career, that he can get a few months together, get 20 games on the bounce together? Yeah,
I mean, 20 games, he needs to get 2, 3, 4 seasons together, doesn't he, really? I think that it will be a continual frustration if he just gets 20 games and then gets injured. But you're right, one step at a time. You always have a fear when you watch him. He runs so smoothly. He runs like Bale a little bit. That sort of real great running style. I wish I'd have had a running style like that. Always looked like I was fighting against every sort of piece of air that I was passing, or whatever air is. Like it was a struggle. But he's got a beautiful running style, but he gets injured. And he gets injured regularly. And it will tire him, it will tire the club, it will tire the manager, it will tire everybody in the end, because I experienced it towards the end of my career where I kept pulling my calf all the time after my ankle injury when I was 32, 33. Thankfully for me, my injuries came right at the end, whereby I was experienced, and if it had happened in my first part of career, I'd have been sort of devastated. And you do feel a little bit like an imposter going into the training ground every day. It does affect you a lot because you don't feel like you're contributing to the dressing room, and you're in the dressing room with the players, but you can't contribute on the training pitch or on a Saturday. And he needs that run of games. He's a big talent for Chelsea, potential talent for England. But Mauricio Pochettino needs a reliable, consistent defence. And we always seem to be talking about when Chilwell and James are fit. And that's a shame for them. But there's going to come a point whereby they're going to have to, at some point, if they carry on getting injured, Chelsea have to say, well, look, we can't plan for them anymore. We just got to accept that that's what it is. It's what they are. So I hope for both of them that they can stay fit because they are big talents. They've got a lot to offer going forward in particular.
And of course, their focus, both of them, obviously Ben Chilwell returning, Reece James still a few months away, is the European Championships. And on that note, I'm going to ask you about the news. It looks like it's going to happen. We're sitting here on Tuesday evening, but Calvin Phillips to West Ham. Is that a move? Obviously, he needs to play some football if he's going to be involved in the Euros. Yeah. But West Ham, is that the right fit?
I think it's a good fit. I mean, I can see why David Moyes would want Calvin Phillips. That reliability in midfield, that player who'll sort of stay there. Lost obviously Declan Rice last summer. So it'll improve West Ham, I think. It's a good move for West Ham. I think it's a good move for Calvin Phillips because he needs to guarantee to play. Gareth Southgate likes him and trusts him. We know that Gareth, when he likes a player and trusts them, he wants them playing and he'll get them back in the team. It's not a position that England are really sort of blessed with lots of options in. So Calvin Phillips, I mean, I thought, obviously, when City signs somebody, it doesn't always work straight away, but what ordinarily happens is that Pep Guardiola, within sort of 18 months, 2 years, makes it happen, makes it work. Mahrez and others, Rodri have had slow starts. But when you looked at Calvin Phillips over a period of a couple of years, when he went in, and let's say he took the place of Rodri, and he's in there alongside Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne, you've got to be an exceptional player to play in that team. So there's this theory they're going around that an average player can play in a great team because basically they will basically be carried by the rest of the players. That isn't the case. You would stand out a million miles if you couldn't cope with the ability and the quick speed of the play and the style of the play. And that's what's happened to Calvin Phillips a little bit at City. It's just all a little bit too quick for him. And you've got to have eyes in the back of your head. You've got to receive it on the half turn and be absolutely brilliant technically. Pep asks so much of his central midfield players, and it's just not quite worked out. But that's fine. We know he's a really good pro. We know he's a really good player, and I think it's a good move for West Ham. It's a good move for Calvin Phillips because the most important thing is that he gets 4 or 5 months of football for England, for himself. Just purely getting his career back on track.
Do you think he's a starter if he gets himself fit and gets regular and helps keep West Ham at the top of the table and in Europe?
He could be. I mean, the fans will want the flair players in and around Declan Rice, won't they? And they'll want Maddisons and sort of Grealishes and Fodens, all those players playing in sort of Bellingham, obviously. But I think there is an element of England needing to have those two holding midfield players in some of the big games. We know that Gareth likes that, and a lot of teams like it as well. Now, obviously, Jordan Henderson has been over to Saudi Arabia. He's come back to Ajax, so he puts himself probably in the frame more than he would have been. But Calvin Phillips, is an obvious choice for Gareth Southgate. He trusts that pair to do a good job. So, yeah, I think that he will be in the frame if he can continue to stay fit. That's the main thing, and obviously make sure he plays for West Ham.
There's obviously going to be a lot of movement, so we're recording here on Tuesday night, and so I'm not going to ask you too much about specific transfers, but it looks like Manchester United are trying to shift a few out, and one that they have brought in is Omar Barada, the new director. I know you've spoken a bit about this earlier, but how much, I mean, the opinion seems to vary a little bit, where it's sort of, okay, well, if Man City really wanted him, he wouldn't have gone, to the other side who go, this is a great coup for Manchester United. What's your thought on it?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. We don't quite know what's gone on at Manchester City. But there's a pathway that would be needed for everybody at every club. And obviously, he's probably 2 or 3 down the chain, 4 down the chain, and wanted to see a pathway to the top. Maybe that wasn't there. I don't know. But, it's deemed that basically it's a very good signing by Manchester United. What I did like about it was that it was almost stealth in the sense that there wasn't this sort of massive build-up over a few months and then it dragged out and who's coming in. It just happened quite quickly. And I like that about it. And what we know about Manchester United is that they haven't got a CEO at this moment in time. Obviously, they've got an interim one, but they haven't got a CEO that will take the club forward long term. They haven't got a sporting director, and they haven't got a head of recruitment. That triangle is critical in a football club. And Manchester United have operated without a sporting director for 10 years, which is just staggering. And one of the problems I think that the Glazer family, I think, have created by not putting that position in place. So this is the start of, hopefully, and it looks like a lot more serious football project at the club, whereby the football side gets treated equally the same as the business side. He obviously has business background. He's a CEO. He's not going to be picking the team, but he has worked, obviously, in the football side of the business and in the commercial side of the business. He's been at Barcelona. He's been at Manchester City. He's got a good pedigree. Look, there's a lot to do, and it's a big ask, and who knows whether it's going to be ultimately successful. But I wouldn't put too much pressure on him too quickly. But there are some quite easy wins. I mean, from all reports, he's a good guy. And to be honest with you, that will help, I think, just settle everybody down at the club, because at the moment you can imagine what the upheaval in the last 10 to 12 months and what's going on in the club from the 400, 500, 600 staff that are in there. They'll not know what's going on from day to day. They'll think, well, is my position safe? Do I need to leave? Who's going to come in? At least they've got that certainty now. How quickly you can start, I'm not sure. But if you can get the people right and the culture right and get those two appointments underneath him right, which is the sporting director and the head of recruitment, they are the main exposure for an owner of a football club in terms of how you create revenue and how you obviously lose money through spending it badly, mainly on players. So they've got to get these three appointments right, and it looks like a very solid start. But there's a big job to do.
I think that's probably about it for this podcast. Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
See you
you
soon. Thank you.